When I first started hearing about Hard Knocks and what it was going to mean for the Giants, there were two thoughts. One, this could be really invasive, and it could get ugly, and people start complaining about, I don't know, whatever. And the other thing I said was, well, maybe you get to know the personalities of a lot of these guys who people pass judgments on. Now, I know that Moose just did basically 4 hours on get rid of the John Mara nonsense and narrative that he's involved and he's making all these decisions. And John's a great dude, and he's always been that way. And this narrative that he's like Jerry Jones is ridiculous. And I know you said that.
I had a little bit of that narrative. Yeah, I did.
But I think you started to see it.
Yeah.
On because of Hard Knocks. The other thing that is most important to me and that I'm taking away from this is that this narrative that this is a make or break season for Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and it felt blown apart to pieces last night.
Blown apart. Clearly, they have a plan in place. Clearly, they know exactly what they're trying to do. And yeah, there's some twists and turns, the whole Saquon stuff, getting the Brian Burns deal done with Dan Morgan down there in Carolina. Like, all of those things aren't perfect, but the way that they navigated it made me feel really good about our organization. It really did.
Yeah, so full disclosure, obviously we're going to talk about Davante Adams and the Jets, some of the All-Star Game stuff, and I know not all of our audience has seen the episode of Hard Knocks that debuted last night on Max. We have several audio clips that we hope accompany some of these stories as we kind of talk Giants football here throughout the early portion of the show that we'll get to. I will start, Tiki, off of that by apologizing to John Mara because off of last week's episode, I really did feel like he was Jerry Jones. Now, I don't think John Mara is without flaws. I think he's a really good guy. I think he's a really good owner. But I still think there were moments last night where you saw how hard it is for him to let Joe Schoen do his job. But he still, as we saw last night, did let Joe Schoen do his job when it came to Saquon Barkley. So before we kind of go over what Joe Schoen had to do and John Mara's feelings on this, let's just hear the debate between John Mara and Joe Schoen before Saquon officially was no longer a Giant.
What's the latest? Just on the Saquon thing.
I just got a text that Chicago's driving the price up and Philly's out. I don't know if that's true or not. Which I don't know if I'll make a couple calls. I don't even know if that's gonna happen, but
I'm gonna have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philadelphia. I'll tell you that. As I've told you, just being out. I had been around enough players, so but he's the most popular player we have by far.
Okay. All right. Now,
what did you hear in that? Because I'll tell you what I heard, but what did you hear in that?
I heard an owner that felt like he was prioritizing his love and the popularity of a player in terms of jersey sales over what the general manager was trying to tell him, which was, hey, this is not in our best interest to build a winning football team.
Right. Marketing. It felt like marketing as opposed to putting the right team together.
Yes.
And unfortunately, and it's not always the case. You've heard me say this for a year now, if you're listening to me on the fan, the salary cap is fungible. Right? You can mess with it. You can do whatever you want, but it does get prohibitive at times if you're overpaying for a position and you need to fill many other positions. And that's exactly where the Giants were. So the thing I heard was that they would love to have Saquon here. One, because he's their identity and he's the most popular player. But to me, that's marketing. That's not what do we need to do to get better. And they needed to address the offensive line. They needed to hit it right in the draft with wide receivers. They needed to give their new defensive coordinator, Shane Bowen, what he wanted. Right? There was other things that they had to do. And while it would have been an amazing, soon to be in the Ring of Honor moment to have re-signed Saquon, the priority of the team as a whole mattered more. That's what I heard when I listened to John Mara and Joe Schoen not really go at it, but discuss what was happening with the Saquon situation.
Which is why I think Hard Knocks has been riveting, insightful. I'm very thankful for it from a Giant fan point of view. I sit here today, Tiki, more comfortable than ever about the direction of the team, including stuff we'll get to later, teasing on forward. But it feels like Joe Schoen was able to do his job. However, You still hear that with John Mara, and I know it's so revisionist history. I can only imagine what Dave Gettleman was sounding like with him, because I'm sure Dave Gettleman was more of a yes man. That's probably why the Giants are in this kind of problem.
Maybe.
And that's why I think what's being portrayed on TV to us, Tiki, is really difficult for John Mara. Like, he knows, hey, look, I gotta absolve myself from what's popular with this team and do this, and he's allowing Joe Schoen to operate. But that part of it is still so scary, because it reminds me of how the Giants have gotten here, those Gettleman dark years, and if the cameras are running then, what would we have seen, Tiki?
Right. No, well, I think you would have seen a lot less collaboration.
Definitely.
I think that's what, I took away from it as well. And I guess I knew this with Brandon, the assistant GM, and Timmy McDonald, who was in there, and Ed Triggs. Like, I felt like I knew that happened, but maybe they were doing it for the show. But I actually kind of feel like that's how their working relationship is. Everybody has a voice. Like, everybody has a say, or everybody has a role. And so this just solidifies to me that the Giants are in good hands, first of all. But two, Hard Knocks needs to never do training camp again.
Oh, and only do the offseason?
only do the offseason. Only do the offseason and only do in season. Like, do something that's real. Like, that you're reacting to what actually you're not manufacturing a storyline. Hey, Sean Mraz is trying out for the Giants. He was in Little Sisters of the Poor, and look, he got an invite because he knows somebody, and he may make the team. He's got 2 kids, and they're excited for him. But
it's always the long-haired blonde guy trying to make special teams.
Right. Bring your playbook and come see the coach. That's so played out and stupid. I think the reality of operating an NFL business is awesome to see.
No doubt about it. And we're going to play more clips, but just more on the Mara stuff. I keep saying the only thing, but Mara to me comes across, and it doesn't mean he's not a good guy, not a good owner. He comes across like the father-in-law or the brother of a bride on a bachelor party in these meetings, where Joe Schoen is with his whole staff. They're trying to work, and every time he walks in the room, it's like, okay, we got to convince him.
He's
we're up
the
to no
owner,
good.
man.
I know that, but Tiki, that's the best way I could collaborate. It's like, put down the lines of cocaine here. Here comes John Mara. We gotta just explain to him what we're doing in a nice way. But I think that Mara, this is why the Saquon thing needs to pay off, and Mara needs to exit. If Saquon has a great year at Philadelphia and they go win a Super Bowl, worst case scenario, that was not going to be the Giants with Saquon Barkley this year, and he needs to forget that. But ultimately, the long-term plan almost has to work now as long as John Mara is the owner, because you don't want John Mara ever playing the what-if game back. You know what I mean? Like, he needs to see Joe Schoen's plan now actually work, because I do fear if this did reverse, and I do feel great about the future, I fear the worst about what happened in a post-Joe Schoen era now with John Mara, where he second guesses the allowing of moves like this.
I don't think you can do that. I mean, that's just it's defeatist. It's like it's loser mentality.
I have a loser mentality.
If something goes wrong, let's go reevaluate every of the last 10 decisions and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that Joe Schoen handled it about as good as he could. Yeah, about as well as he could, I should say. I don't know if Saquon's agent was straightforward. I have no idea.
Well, hold on with that, Tiki. So for the audience to hear, we have Joe Schoen talking to Saquon's agent, and we'll discuss more of that.
Good day for you. Good day to be Ed Barry. Oh, what's my man gonna get? North of what you said? 12.5 APY, 25 guaranteed. North of that? Again, we're not gonna go there. We're out. Is it in the division? I'm trying to prepare myself mentally for what's gonna happen. I mean, that's all.
So look, we know that what Saquon's number was, what they wanted, Saquon's camp, what they wanted to get. And I know the narrative now is the Giants never made an offer. And then so people get twisted about that.
Right.
But
you saw last night.
Yeah.
In the most literal sense, yes, the Giants didn't technically make an offer.
Exactly.
But you want to talk about stretching the truth beyond anything.
That is such a twisting of what actually went on. Right. Of course they didn't make an offer because they weren't going to accept the offer.
Of course. Right. So and that's where we might as well get this out now, Tiki. Because it almost feels like closure on Saquon Barkley Day in many ways.
It does.
It feels like the Giants have turned the page officially with their fans. We got to see, which would not have happened in any other offseason, the actual closure on the Saquon Barkley. We got it on TV last night. Saquon Barkley, we take you back to when he left in March and the whole "you're dead to me" thing and this, that, and the other, okay? He put out on Twitter in a defense to Giant fans, the Giants never made me an offer. And he tried to make the Giants look bad and basically twisted it in a way that he wanted to be a Giant for life and the Giants never made him an offer. What you see last night is, yes, and heard just now in that clip, the Giants didn't technically make him that offer. But they also didn't make him the offer because they wanted him to see the market because they were doing right by him, not wrong by him. I do have a major issue with the way Saquon Barkley handled the aftermath of leaving the Giants. To quote the kids, just be real, dog.
Well,
you wanted the money, you wanted the bag, you got it, and nobody faults you for that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing.
He wanted to go get paid, and he went and got paid. The Giants simply were not in a position because they're not an established team. The Philadelphia Eagles are an established team. The other teams that maybe were in this conversation that backed out of it, Chicago was one that we heard. The Houston Texans were one that we heard as well. What's common with the Giants? They're not an established team yet. Maybe Houston is more along the line, but that may have been just some first-year head coach, first-year quarterback, favorable schedule because of how bad they were a year ago.
What's that sound like? The Giants going after Darren Waller a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. So, the Texans, the Bears, the Giants, they weren't in a position to overpay for the luxury because their teams aren't set yet. Who is?
Right.
The Philadelphia Eagles, who are a piece or two away from being right back in the Super Bowl, at least in their estimations. And I give Howie Roseman a ton of credit for the team, for the job that he's done over the last couple of years. But because they're in that situation, they can afford to potentially, I'm using potentially because I don't know, overpay for a running back. The Giants aren't in a position to overpay for a position like running back when they have so many other holes that they had to fill.
Same reason it didn't work out with Christian McCaffrey in Carolina, and guess where it will work out and has worked out? San Francisco, because they built enough of a team to get that. What did you have, Tom?
So off the clip we just played where Shane gets the text message that says Philly's out, to use Sean's analogy, or play off that analogy, they're at a bachelor party. The old man's in the room. The strippers are on their way. Do you think Shane just made that up that he got that? Because it was clearly wrong information. All right, let's just appease Mara and get him out of here.
I think there's just a lot of smoke around free agency. It's a lot of nonsense. It's a lot of people lying to one another, just trying to gain position. And I think what's interesting is that when you saw, because they quickly pivoted off of Saquon. They're like, all right, now we have. There's still a lot of stuff we got to do.
Right. And they get into that.
Don't get it twisted that this is only about Saquon Barkley. There's a lot that they had to do. So they quickly pivoted, and I thought they did a good job of it because I think that's actually how it happened to Brian Burns and getting that deal done. What you saw with the Brian Burns situation is that Dan Morgan, who I think Joe Shane had worked with before.
Yes, their daughters are best friends.
Right. You saw what a relationship can do.
Right.
And while that negotiation was hard because they had been talking about it for months, like the behind the scene relationship business in the NFL is something we don't ever think about. We don't. Hey, was this guy here?
Right.
Was he like an assistant when this guy was assistant GM? And there's relationships.
And can help you get wins too. Joe Shane won that Brian Burns negotiation.
100%.
Dave Gettleman loses all those negotiations, which is another reason you guys should all feel really, really positive about where the Giants are. So ultimately, theme of the show to start. John Mara is allowing Joe Shane to do his job, even if he's kind of hanging over there. But he's the owner, and he's entitled to do that. And we have a official closure to Saquon Barkley, and the Giants now can move forward, and we will get to more clips throughout. What else you got?
One quick other thing here, and this is for Teak here. It's from the silly department. So early in the episode, Joe Shane is hanging out with his staff in his office. John Mara shows up. What did John Mara do?
What do you mean?
He knocked on the door.
Yeah,
he owns the team. He doesn't have to knock.
Another reason the Giants are in good hands. He had the respect to knock.
My mom still didn't knock on my door when I lived at home, and I was like 27 years old.
What if you button your pants trying to redo them?
Tommy, you went to college.
Yeah.
Right? You're in college and your door's shut. Yeah. Like, what do? You knock on the door.
Yeah, but Joe Shane, what's he playing Uno in there with his wife? I mean, do we have to knock?
He's doing.
Come on.
Of course
he's
he
in the
has
office
to die.
14 hours.
He's being
entitled.
respectful
Yes.
for his new general manager. He could be in some deep conversation with Saquon or whoever, and he didn't want to be interruptive. So, look, give him some credit.
Yeah. One more I had a little bit of an issue with before we take your calls on if you are positive or negative about the direction of the New York Giants after watching last night's episode, 888-808-1019. I did have a little bit of a gripe with John Mara calling Saquon Barkley the most popular Giants player by far. I thought that was unintentionally a slight at other guys like Dexter Lawrence, who the fan base has gravitated to. And I do think as much as jersey sales are there, and remember the position he plays, I know that we all argue about Daniel Jones from Meter Kingdom Cup, so I'm not even putting him in this. From the moment he was drafted, Saquon Barkley, not to his own doing, has caused a major division and fracture in the Giants fan base because of the resource used and everything. Doesn't mean we all didn't root because we root for whoever's wearing a Giant uniform.
Yeah.
But I have a tough time calling Saquon Barkley the most popular player by far when half the fan base basically has hated the idea that he's on the team for 6
because
years.
he was drafted so high.
Yes.
And what people would
So
think.
what team's popularity? Just jersey sales?
No, I think it's more.
He was not universally loved.
I think I don't disagree with that, but I think it's more like Q score. Like if you were asking the lay fan in Iowa or Minnesota or wherever, name a Giant.
Yeah.
The one that they would name would be Saquon Barkley.
Right, but
He
doesn't
was-
fantasy football and all that other stuff play into that?
Yeah, but that's the point.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like Saquon Barkley was Rookie of the Year. He's a freak physically. He's got home run ability. And so when John Mara is talking about most popular, he's talking about most known, right? Most identifiable with the Giants team. And losing that sucks, especially to a rival. And it's why, we all got emotional about it when free agency happened back in March. And he, 30 seconds into it, he's signing with the Philadelphia Eagles. So right, that's more of what I think John was getting at. Not necessarily we need him because our fan base is going to revolt if Saquon Barkley's not here.
Because I think it felt leaning towards the majority of people that said, yeah, please let Saquon go. Let's build this team the right way and keep and more feel that way. We've talked about this with
and I
Daniel
think
Jones,
that's what we see. We see that they have the competency. It's like extreme competency to build a good team and put a good roster together for Dabes and now Shane Waldron as a defensive coordinator. I really enjoyed watching how they work together. I really did. I know those guys, and I don't even know if I know how detailed it is. You know what I mean?
It was incredible, and they might have pulled a little robbery on the Jets. More on that in a little bit. 888-808-1019. Mark in Westchester starts us off on Evident Tiki. Mark, what's up, man?
What's up, Mark?
Hey guys, listen, I haven't watched the show yet, Hard Knocks, but I listened to the radio station, so I've heard a couple of the clips. And the original call that Shane had with Saquon, he basically told him, go test the market, and he asked him for a shot to come back and make an offer.
Yeah.
So then he goes and tests the market. He gets an offer. He gets $26 million guaranteed. His agent gives him a number, and the Giants didn't make him an offer. So why is that playing a game? Like, if he wanted to be a Giant and they offered him $20 million, maybe he stays.
I think you have to go think about the first call that he had with Saquon's agent, where he asked him if we come to $12.5 million AAV, 26 guaranteed 3-year deal. Will Saquon be a Giant? Like, can you guarantee that that's going to get him here? And the answer was kind of him and hawing.
Right. And that's what Mark didn't hear because he hasn't seen the show.
Right. So there's another side of this where it felt like Saquon went and tested the market. Now the agent's going to play whatever he tested in the market against the Giants.
Right.
As opposed to giving him a number.
And in the prior 2 episodes, Mark, and for anybody who hasn't seen the show, there is a theme that built up to this episode involving the Saquon Barkley negotiations, and Joe Shane discusses how last year, how stressful it was with the franchise tag, and we don't really know exactly what went on there. And he mentions a couple times now through 3 episodes and puts in quotations, which is important. The hand quotes he puts up, we don't want to disrespect him, which tells me he was told to Joe Shane or Mara, whoever else in the Giants, that Saquon felt disrespected by an offer that had close to $25 million guaranteed a year ago. So for everybody that would say, well, the Giants never made Saquon an offer. No, they did, and it felt disrespectful to Saquon. So rather than go through that and have Saquon and his agent drag the Giants that they're disrespectful,
right,
they didn't technically make him an offer before seeing what he had. So that's why it is a big time stretching of the truth by Saquon and his agent that the Giants never made him an offer.
And I just think the overall theme, and I think we're all watching it play out here, is John Mara wanted to keep Saquon Barkley for the business reasons. But to be fair, Saquon was their best offensive player, so it backs up both ways. And Shane and Dabo were ready to move on. They wanted Motor here. They're comfortable with him. He played in Buffalo. They even ranked him above DeAndre Swift, which maybe is a conversation for another day based on how Singletary does here. But they wanted their guy. They wanted Motor. They were done with Saquon, and I think they were just doing the song and dance to appease the owner of the team who desperately wanted to keep his most popular player, that, like he said.
888-808-1019. We'll continue to take your calls on the direction of the Giants, Saquon Barkley, and even a little look ahead. Did the Giants get the better of the Jets in free agency? Something we didn't see coming last night, you Jet fans. It's Sean and Tiki on Evan and Tiki here on The Fan.